Welcome to the Albany Book Festival online, presented by the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. You can learn more about the festival and find direct links to independent booksellers at our festival webpage, albanybookfestival.com. Follow us on social media and hear from more videos from the Writers Institute.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jen Kowalski. I'm the program coordinator for the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. This workshop is part of this year's virtual Albany Book Festival. If you want to find out more about the festival, you can visit albanybookfestival.com. You'll find a link there to our YouTube page where we've been posting a new author interview every weekday, starting on September 10th through September 24th. If you have questions during the workshop, feel free to submit them in the chat. We'll be stopping at various portions throughout to kind of monitor the questions and take more from there. We'll be starting with those first, so definitely enter them into the chat. I'm going to now pass things over to author and publisher Tom Swyers.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking time out of your busy Saturday to be with us. Well, I don't know if it's early in the morning, but at least mid-morning. Thanks to the New York State Writers Institute for inviting me to speak. Is there any way we can get the slides there? Up. Oh, okay, there we go. Can everyone see those? I hope so. If you gain anything from this talk, please consider donating to the Institute. I was talking to Jen before we just kicked this off, and she indicated that the UAlbany Foundation accepts donations for the New York State Writers Institute, and you can earmark any donations to the New York State Writers Institute through them. So consider doing that, please. Thank you to those who gave advanced questions to Jen for the workshop. I have used many of these questions to create my presentation. So we have a lot to cover, so I hope to have some fun doing it. So let's get started. So on this screen, who am I? I'm an alumnus of the New York State Writers Institute program at Skidmore. I'm a lawyer, knowledgeable in publishing law, and also a former judge. I'm also an author of 3 thrillers in the Lawyer David Thompson series, all set in the Capital Region. So I'm going to refer to these books at some point in my talk to answer some of your questions. So let's briefly take a look at them. They are all thrillers, and again, part of the series, starting from left to right. Saving Babe Ruth, 2014. That was self-published or independently published, won the Benjamin Franklin Book Award for the best first fiction, and was a runner-up for best popular fiction in 2015. 2017, The Kildare Connection. So that's sort of a hybrid book. It was selected as a winner in an international writing competition run by Amazon, and I received in advance and sold my ebook rights to Amazon in exchange for 50% of the royalties. So I'm traditionally published by Kindle Press, which is an Amazon imprint. For the ebook, I retain the rights for my paper book and other rights as well. And Case to Kill is my 3rd book, April 2019. That's self-published or independently published. So on average, all 3 of my books are sales ranked in the top 2% of ebooks selling on Amazon at any given time. Saving Babe Ruth is a consistent bestseller in its ebook categories, mostly baseball. Over my writing career as an independent author, I've held every single position within a publishing company. Because basically I do it all. The only thing I don't do is my own editing. I have a wonderful friend, an editor by the name of Chris, who does this. Make no mistake about this. It's a very challenging business. It can often feel like you're navigating a minefield, and I understand that. My mailbox is full of get rich quick course offerings. Every morning, and I'm constantly being pitched these things wherever I go, whether it's on the internet or out in bookstores. Many of these things are being sold by authors themselves. That should tell you at least one thing. There's more money to be made in selling these rich, quick writing programs and book writing themselves. So if you're going to write books thinking you're going to make a living at it, chances are you're probably going to be disappointed. Sure, there's outliers that these programs point out. The people who are making a lot of money and selling their books. But for the vast majority of writers, it's challenging. So next slide, please, Jen. So with that said, I stumbled on the role of publishing coach a few years ago. I don't advertise this much, and I'm kind of booked through the end of October. But when my publishing marketing friend saw what I was doing in marketing books, she asked if I could do the same for her titles. So I've launched and marketed everything from children's books to romance novels, from exercise books to books dealing with medical issues. So I consult authors and publishers on every step of the publishing process. My goal is to empower authors and publishers to do as much on their own as they can with my guidance. Long term, to be an author today, you need more skills than just being a good writer. I would say as an author, you have to be just as proficient in marketing as in writing, whether you are traditionally published or self-published. So my email address is at the bottom in case anybody has any questions about this presentation or anything that they want to follow up about. Next slide, please. So the ebook market today. Click that, Jen. Amazon's ebook market share is between 83 and 90% by unit volume. Last year, I reported it was 83%. This year, I think it's gone up some, probably because of the pandemic. So a new ebook is published every 3 to 5 minutes. Next. That's about 131,000 new titles every year. Next. So it's estimated that there are 6 million ebooks on Amazon today. So the takeaway from this is that writing, publishing, marketing a book could well be the most competitive thing you've ever done in your life. So let's take a look at the big picture of what I'm saying here. As an author entering the market, you are competing against what's being published currently, plus what's about to be published in the future, plus everything else since the beginning of time that's found its way onto Amazon. So whether you are traditionally published or independent published, writing a book is kind of like entering the lottery. So one of the questions I received was, what's my opinion of self-publishing? And so, before I answer that, maybe everyone could just sort of enter in some words into the chat of what comes to mind when they hear of self-publishing. And I don't think Jen's going to identify you, so let loose. If you have something you want to say, go ahead. And let's see what Jen comes up with, see what's being said.
Well, while people are typing in responses, oh wait, here we go. Empowering but alienating, rowing your own boat. Someone says it's a drag. Someone says it's lower cost but offers full control. A lot of work rarely bears much fruit. A true struggle.
Okay.
Hard work, sometimes crap published. Impossible to get readers to find your work. And another response is has its trade-offs.
Okay, the last one is very, very.
We're honest. I will say.
I like the honesty because that's okay. It's good. That's so.
Another person said, while I'm traditionally pubbed through a small press, I have high respect for well-done self-pubbed books. As long as the quality is there, they can be great.
Awesome. Good. Well, we're going to echo some of that. So let's hit enter there. So I refer to self-publishing as independent publishing. The term self-publishing has a stigma associated with it, suggesting lower quality than traditionally published books. Some or a few people still carry that prejudice, and I underline the word prejudice, but I've seen plenty of low-quality traditionally published books on the market too. So each book should be judged individually If you're not doing this, you're simply discriminating, and I mean that sincerely. So books are like people because there's an author behind every one of them. So if you say all self-published books are bad, you might as well be saying all green people are bad. I think you get my drift. You know, all books should be judged individually. I think I heard that through some of the comments. And so I actually had this experience in Cooperstown with my book, Saving Babe Ruth. I was at it was a Hall of Fame weekend, which is in July of every year. And along the main drag there in Cooperstown, they have a bunch of book signings going on and selling various baseball merchandise. And so there was this one gentleman that was there one day, and he was just thumbing my book and just keep looking at it and going to the back and the front and opening the pages and looking at the spine and kind of shaking his head. And come to find out, you know, after a few minutes, I started talking to him, and my wife, who was there, was talking to him too. He was from one of the big 5 publishing houses, and he was absolutely amazed at the quality of that book. And actually, so the book was already out there, and he took the book back to his people, and they were considering purchasing the rights to that book. And this is after it was out on the market, right? So people already seen it and already selling, and there was no agent involved. And so I think that kind of goes to a theme which I'm going to echo here, is that you know, one of the ways of looking to get traditionally published, if that's your goal, is to be a successful self-publisher, because if you build it, they will come. So so this picture here, this is as an independent author. An independent author is someone who publishes under his or her own name or imprint. So I publish under Hillcrest House Publishing. Hillcrest is really me doing business under an assumed name. So for those who are of an accounting background, that means I'm a sole proprietor. I am Tom Swyers, doing business as Hillcrest House Publishing. So I just filled out the appropriate paperwork at my county, paid $25, and now I can compete against the likes of Random House. Okay, next. Okay, so each author must determine the best fit for him or her. Next. Some choices are easier than others. For example, if your genre's market is mainly found in schools or libraries, traditional publishing may be the way to go. Someone asked about the best way to approach an agent or publisher in a time-efficient manner. I would look at Query Tracker. Query Tracker is a database of agents, their genre interests, and their track record. It's also a personal organization tool that allows you to keep track of what you're doing with prospective agents. There's a free and a premium version for like $25 a year. So that's something I would look at. Okay, next. Someone asked about timing for looking for an agent. The sooner the better. It can be a process. It can be time consuming, but it can be enlightening, because you'll find out that, you know, certain agents, or maybe a good number of agents, are interested in maybe a certain take on your genre that you weren't necessarily really going to include, but now that you see that there's an interest in it, well, you know, maybe that'll impact your writing. How many agents should you query? You know, you just query the good agents through your research, whether it's in Publishers Weekly or whether it's Query Tracker, and you know, numbers are always random. I think maybe 30 to 50 is probably a good number if that's the way you want to go. Next slide, please. Or next, let's compare. And okay, so we're going to compare independent with traditional, with a little sense of humor. So the green slots here, the green boxes, indicate that it's an advantage. So in this slide, here's an advantage for traditional. You can get an exposure in traditional brick and mortar bookstores, libraries, and even nationwide exposure. For independent, generally won't get nationwide exposure in bookstores. If you work to get nationwide bookstore orders, it really is too much risk, from my from my perspective. Because if your printed books don't sell, the retailer will send them back to the printer to be destroyed, or they will deliver them to your garage. So you'll pay for that. So local bookstores may be a better option. Okay. So here's an advantage of being a traditional. At cocktail parties, a traditionally published author can say that they have an agent or a publisher to impress family and friends. You'll look successful. It's always like, my agent says this and my agent says that. Okay. Independent family and friends will wonder what you're doing with your life. But if you work hard and smart, your book success will make up for it. Okay. So traditionally, you're more likely to get speaking events. You're more likely to get paid for speaking events too. So that's an advantage for being a traditional author. So as an independent author, you're more likely to have book talks with yourself or your pets. Your friends and family can only take so much of your book talk before they ask you to seek professional help. We are not judged for what we write, but how we go about doing it. We're as a self-published or independent author, we're still, like I mentioned before, kind of discriminated against. Like for example, in writing competitions, they don't accept so-called self-published works, so they don't take them seriously. Okay, so now we're going to move on and look at this, which is a drawback for traditional publishing. The publishing process of query, wait, rejection can go on for years, decades before you get an agent, if you get one at all. The agent may want you to do revisions before taking it to publishers, and that takes more time. But as an independent, you can get accepted or rejected by readers immediately and eliminate the middle person. I like that one because it really highlights what this is all about, and that's reaching readers and connecting rich readers. The traditional publishers take on a particular book is their opinion, and it's an educated opinion. They've been in the business for a long time, and they know what's going to work, what's going to sell, and what's going to have difficulties. But at the end of the day, it's the reader reception that counts. Okay, next slide. So as traditional, once you get an agent, he or she has to sell your book to publisher. That can take a long time with no guarantees. If you get a publishing contract, it can take a few years for the book to be published because the book must meet with publisher's approval before it's sold. Okay. Independent. Well, you could have your ebook and paperback written and launched within 24 to 72 hours, but you better make sure your book is up to industry standards. And I think someone echoed that in their comments about self-publishing, that they were more apt to accept a self-published book that's done well. Well, when you put something out there under your name and not a pseudonym, you're putting yourself out there for people to review and to comment on, your efforts. And so you want to make sure it's the best possible thing you can produce. So if you go traditional way, you can lose your support in the publishing house before your book is published. Your traditional editor could leave for another job, or looks like that's spelled wrong. That spell check didn't get it. You have to hire a new editor for that, or get laid off before your book is published. Your agent could leave or retire. Their personal problems could well become your problems. So I actually had a friend who's a traditional publisher, went with a traditional publisher, and so the acquiring agent and the editor, they both left the traditional firm, and so he had to actually go out and hire his own editor to make sure the book was up to standards, even though it was launched through the traditional house. They just kind of they were interested in it when those people were on board, but when they left, the interest kind of waned, and so it was up to him to make sure that it was up to standards before it went out into the market. So as an independent, you won't fire yourself or leave yourself for a better job. Also, an editor is always available for hire. Next slide, please. So when you go traditional, you sell your rights away to your publisher, and good luck in getting them back, no matter how poorly the book sells. Once the book is out there, it's pretty much over for the publisher, unless it becomes a breakaway bestseller. It's one chance and done. There are no do-overs. So as an independent or self-published, Life can be a do-over because you own your own rights. You can withdraw your titles from sale. You can retitle them and put them out there. You can, I have a question in my box. I can't read them. Excuse me a second here. Oh, there we go. Life can be a do-over. Titles can be withdrawn from sale, improved, rewritten, and retargeted. You'll lose your reviews though if you do that. So if you have your book out there, and I'm talking about Amazon. I'm sure it probably applies to the other platforms as well. You take your book off, you're starting over. Well, you're going to lose all your reviews. Well, for some books, maybe that's a good thing, but you should be aware of that. Okay. So for traditional, you generally get marketing help for the first 30 days, and you're on your own unless you're a big success. Unless it's a sales hit in 30 days, it's on to the next book for the publisher. It makes little economic sense for traditional authors to market their books because their ebook royalty is so small, about 12 to 17%. So, I have traditional authors who kind of approach me through one way or another, and I think about marketing their books, but it always, when it comes down to it, they pretty much subcontracted those efforts to the traditional publisher, and when they see the economics of it, they finally do realize that. So as an independent, marketing is forever. When your royalty is 70% to Amazon Kindle, if ebooks are priced between $2.99 and $9.99, your royalty is 70%. So you can use the extra income you make for marketing. Okay. So traditionally, this is important. I think it's overlooked. If the book title, book description, blurb, categories, keywords, or price needs adjustment, you don't have the ability to make those changes easily, if at all. You don't have the ability to use promotional service, so it's not cost effective to use them. So if your book is, for example, on Amazon and it's traditionally published, you don't have access to any of the advertising platforms for that particular book. It belongs to the traditional publisher, okay? And so even if you wanted to, you really couldn't use their platform for advertising. As an independent, the sky is the limit. You can change anything about your book based on the feedback you receive through reader reviews, advertising, or other marketing efforts. This is a huge advantage. So, if you read the reviews of your book and you find out people are highlighting something they really like that you didn't include in your book description, well, you can rewrite it. The other thing is important is the categories and keywords. We'll talk about those later. Next slide, please.
Before we start part 2, I'm going to go back to 2 questions in the chat really quick.
Yep.
One regarding query tracker. Would you also recommend Publishers Marketplace?
Yeah, I don't have anything. I don't know of it that well, but no. That's if you think it's a viable option. Anything that gets you the information that you need, that's reliable, use it. And be thankful that you have it.
Okay. And then 2 questions that were related more to your specific books. What sequence of things do you believe happened to lead you being awarded Best First Book? Is it just it being a great book, who you knew, being visible, the time it was released?
Yeah, Best First Book. So the Benjamin Franklin Award is awarded by the Independent Publishers Association every year. They have a whole bunch of awards. And so, yeah, I thought, of course, the author, I thought it was a good book. I think, of course, now that I look back on it, it could have been improved in a lot of ways. I think my most recent book is my best book. As an author, we always hope that we're getting better as we go. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I just entered the book and it won. So.
Excellent. All right. Ready to move on to part 2?
Yep. So here's a question I was asked. I'm interested in building an online presence. Any suggestions? Next. Recommendation. So I say get a Facebook business page so you can use the Facebook advertising platform. You can't use it if you just have your own individual personal Facebook page. You actually have to become use an author business page to use the Facebook advertising platform. Sign up for Twitter or Instagram, wherever your readers might gather, but don't spend a lot of time on social media if your goal is to sell books. See the next slide, please. Okay. So what form of social media marketing seems to have the biggest impact in selling books? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, videos. Next. Response, my experience, none of them if you're just posting content and hoping for sales. So I've used smart URLs to track clicks on my content that I post on Facebook or on Twitter to see if there's any impact on sales, and I could not discern any. And that goes for Instagram or any of my own book trailer videos. So book trailer videos, if you go on my my Killdeer page on Amazon, I actually uploaded my book trailer. I think it's pretty cool, but guess what? Readers are not interested in that visual experience that's given by a video. I imagine that they want to use their imaginations to kind of gauge what the book might be about and mean to them as a reader. And so also paid advertising on these platforms, I'm talking about Twitter, Instagram, are not cost effective at this time. And of course things change, but they're not. So confirmation. So, you know, I do all my analysis, and then I look at other authors that are doing sort of the marketing work that I'm doing, and they're not using those platforms either. So I guess they must come to the same conclusion. But however, paid advertising on Facebook, I have to catch up here. Excluding Instagram, that can be a good thing. It can work. That's a pay to play. It's not free. Okay, next slide. So what works? These advertising platforms work for discounted or full price books, but you must pay to play. Facebook advertising platform that I mentioned earlier, Amazon has its own advertising platform, and BookBub has an advertising platform. And for those who don't know what BookBub is, it's the largest email service that promotes discounted books. It also has an amazing platform. The targeting on all these things are amazing. For example, if I wanted to target readers, all readers in California who are over the age of, or all people in California that are over the age of 50 that were fans of John Grisham books, I could do it. Or I could just say, you know, my demographic is such that only people over the age of 50 are interested in my book, so I can target them that way. Each platform is different. So Amazon allows you to target keywords. So if someone were to type in, for example, the word legal thriller, all of a sudden they might see Tom's books up there as something for them to consider in the form of an advertisement. BookBub is the largest email service out there, as I mentioned, and it allows you to target specific authors and specific genres. You can't do anything with respect to the age or even sex of your particular reader, but it's very, very, very well done. So similar to BookBub, there's some smaller discount email services like FreeBooksy, eReader News Today, Robin Reads, and Fussy Librarian that can work for popular genres if you're giving your book away free, but not so well if it's discounted. None of these have an advertising platform, so they're just email services. You're sending. They have an email list. They're sending your book out to. They have the people on their email list. They're saying, look at this book. It's under this genre, and it's being offered for free or at a discount today. And hopefully you get some sales that way. My experience is such that more recently, advertising that way for paid books is not as effective as the advertising platforms. The cost of FreeBooksy or things like that are like, I think FreeBooksy is $90 about. E-reader news today is your best deal, around $45 to $50 a shot. Robin Reads around 70. Fussy Librarian around 50. All depends on your genres. So giving your book away is still a viable strategy. We can talk about that later. And big publishers is key. Big publishers do not use any of these advertising platforms. I'm talking about the pay-to-play platforms on Facebook or Amazon. I mean, they really don't, especially Amazon. I don't see them on Amazon. On BookBub, the traditional authors will use the email list to announce sales, but the traditional publishers will not. They do not seem to use the advertising in that. I don't know if you have BookBub and you open up an email, you'll see an ad. Someone is paying for that ad in that email, and they're usually independent books. So you definitely have an advantage as an independent author in advertising. Okay, next slide. So in my talk last year, I spoke about how to advertise on Amazon. I said the trend is for Amazon to give authors more and more tools to advertise their book. That trend has continued this past year, and it should continue going forward. Today and going forward, you must have both good writing skills and good marketing skills, regardless of whether you're traditionally or independently published. I really believe that these marketing skills should be taught in writing programs in universities. Next. Any questions about this topic?
Well, going back to the last section, how do you even get your book reviewed by independent publishers award committees?
Well, that's interesting. I was going to touch upon it later, but I'll do it now. And that is, first off, there's plenty of awards out there that cost money to enter. You used to be skeptical of those type of award kind of competitions. I'm going to tell you, be very frank with you, awards in and of themselves do not sell books. They don't. If you put up your award on your Amazon page where your book is present, they really do not have an impact in and of themselves. However, with that being said, it's how you use the award. If you use the award in an advertisement for your book, so if I put an ad on Amazon saying, Ben Franklin Book Award winner, there's reliable information out there that will tell you that you're going to get a higher click-through rate than if you didn't put the award on the advertisement. So it does allow for a higher click-through rate on advertisements, but in and of itself, being placed on an Amazon page, tucked away with all this other information, is not going to generate sales. It's the reader reception to your book. It's going to have more of an impact. Okay.
One of the other questions regarding Facebook advertising, Millie wrote in, I use Facebook a lot for personal use, and I've never even seen a Facebook ad. My eyes just skip right by them.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's an interesting thing that she brings up, and I'll tell you why. So Facebook as a platform is challenging, and because of the reasons she just said. You're on Facebook to connect with friends. You're not there necessarily to shop for books. And all of a sudden you see this advertisement for books. Well, you're not in the proper frame of mind for shopping for books at that time. So that is definitely a challenge in that platform. With that said, that's not so much true as for BookBub and Amazon, because when you're on BookBub reading their emails, and when you're on Amazon, you're shopping for books. And so you're going to have more success with those platforms. With that said, there are certain instances where Facebook might be a better way to go because it has different targeting. If your book has a regional appeal, or even local appeal, or even a statewide appeal, you can target readers in that state or locale. I mean, you can get it down to towns. And you can target according to age group or sex and readers of particular genres that apply to you. Or for example, if you were doing a book on the environment, you could do target people who are members of like Sierra Club, in your area, and so that ad would appear in their feed, and that might have more relevance because those things are tough to connect with the other platforms. But on doing that on Facebook, definitely has its advantages. Okay.
So would you say targeting with Facebook is better than Amazon and BookBub?
No, can't make that generalization because it all depends on your book. It depends on your book. One might have advantages for you that might have advantages for others, depending upon your book, your genre, and who or what you're targeting.
All right, those are the only ones for now. So we can start on oh wait, sorry, another outlier question. I have varied interests in what to write and who the content would appeal to. If writing is like winning the lottery, then why not write all types and see what is successful? For instance, children's books, self-help, etc. So how best to publish with the same name? It could feel lost for readers. What about publishing under different names in different genres?
Well, yeah, definitely. There's people who do that, use pseudonyms, and let's go back to the lottery, the whole analogy. So maybe I'll modify that a little bit. So there are books that just generally sell better than others in different genres. I mean, like romance or mystery thrillers, they're going to be better sellers overall than perhaps sci-fi or maybe fantasy. So there's it depends on what genre you're writing as well. But certainly you can use different pseudonyms and try your hand at just putting books out there and getting feedback that way. I think for a young writer who doesn't want to put their name on the line, that might be a good way to experiment. They just want to go out and see what it's like out there in the marketplace. So they write a book. Maybe they have a full-time job and they don't want to put their name out there as an author for whatever reason. And they put it on their pseudonym and they see what takes and try to market it that way. So.
Okay, and another new question: how do you determine your target audience?
So targeting in what way? I mean, targeting in as far as your readership.
Well, probably for readership, but I think there's also the other side of targeting advertising too, especially in Facebook.
Okay, yeah. So I'll tell you what, we'll come back to that. I'm going to throw an additional slide up at the end of this program, and I'll take it from that slide. I think that'll be a good illustration of how to approach it.
Okay. All right. We can move on to part 3. There we go.
So juggling everything. So I'm very interested in learning about Mr. Swyers' experience with juggling a career while simultaneously writing, publishing, marketing his books. Okay, next. So I get up at 4 a.m. and write or I market. It's the best time for me. By 8 a.m. I'm done and I can't sit still. So I run 3 miles a day or I bike. I did a presentation at the NYS Writers Institute, which is for kids, teenagers, over in the Slingerlands. And one of the teenagers asked me, "So what's my best writing exercise?" I say, "It's getting up and running. That's my writing exercise. I need to clear my head and get myself focused." So then I do legal work or anything else that has to be done. I work from home, take a break in the afternoon, and I divide the day. Dividing the day is really important for me. So I might, during that break, I might crash for a half hour or an hour. Clear my head. I think sleep is very important, and so to clearing your head. And so what I'm basically doing is I'm sort of cheating time and getting 2 writing segments in during a day, in the morning and then in the evening. And I try to come back with fresh eyes. And it's amazing what fresh eyes will do. It really is amazing. So for those who are considering writing a novel and just thinking it's just too big of a project, just write a little every day. It all adds up. I mean, if you write 200 words a day, it would take 400 days to write an 80,000 word book. So it's not asking too much. So break it up into pieces. So wisdom is to learn what's important and what's not. All right. Because, next slide, there are only multiple choice questions. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so if you did everything you were supposed to do to create an author platform, you'd be A, working 24/7, 365 days per year and still not getting it all done, let alone having any time to write. B, broke. C, divorced. D, an alcoholic. E, all the above. For me, the correct answer for that is E. There's constantly people, like I said, just telling you to do this, to do that, to do everything, got to do this. So, no one's ever sat down and added up all the stuff, all the time it takes to do all this stuff together. And if you added it all up, you wouldn't have time to write. So the lesson here is to keep it simple. Next slide. How do I keep it simple? All right. This is how I keep it simple. Here are the important things of publishing and writing a book. Book title and cover. The title really should be something that the readers in your genre could associate with immediately. Cover is so important. I mean, you just, with all the books I talked about, millions and millions of books, you just have a fraction of a second to capture the interest of readers visually. And the best way to do that is, is to design a cover which they can identify as part of the genre they're looking for. And just to generate interest. You've got that second. You can't mess with it because, again, this is really competitive. So on Amazon, category selection keywords are also important. So when you go into Amazon to list your book for sale, they give you 2 categories which you can list it in for an ebook. I'm talking about ebooks here, but a lot of it applies to paperbacks. And they also have a section for keywords. Well, category selection, think of them like bookshelves. And if the more bookshelves you can put your book on, the better off you are, as long as the bookshelves are relevant. Keywords. So when you go into Amazon, they give you these like 7 spaces for keywords. I did a whole seminar on this last year, and the trick is not to just enter one word, is to enter strings of words that are connected, so that when people are searching on Amazon using like legal thriller books like Grisham, I can't use an author name in your keywords, but books, legal thriller books or mystery legal thriller books. Maybe that's a search term, and maybe that's in my keywords, mystery thriller, books. That's in those keywords. That's going to more likely bring up my book to the person's attention. Okay, next. Book description or blurb. So this is a whole different type of writing. You just can't throw up a couple sentences which you think your book's about and expect it to do well. So for those people who want more on that, YouTube search Libby Hawker, and she did a couple of videos, 2 videos like 6 years ago on writing a book description and blurbs. I find those to be very helpful, and they keep it simple. Next one, the book itself. Well, the topic, the genre, and the writing and the editing quality, those are all important, of course. It goes without saying. Getting a sufficient number of reader reviews, okay, that's important. But marketing too. But this is really important about marketing. Marketing doesn't work well if any of the above are not done well. Your marketing is only as strong as your weakest link. You can't sell snow to Eskimos. You really gotta focus in on getting those 5 things that I listed done right, and for the marketing to work effectively. Okay. A website and also a mailing list is helpful. Having your own website and trying to create your own mailing list, it is definitely helpful, more helpful for some authors than other. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary in this day and age to have a mailing list. But for some authors, it is very, very helpful. Okay. If it's not listed above, there's likely a reason. So if there's some things you think matter and it's not listed above, there's generally a reason. So if anybody has any questions?
And let's see. Regarding number 5,
Yep.
How do you go about getting reader reviews? This to me is the most difficult and frustrating part of the process. Also, do you actually feel reviews translate to generating new sales?
So it's a good question. Unfortunately, only 1 to 3% of readers or books that are sold end up generating a review. That's in my experience and the experience of others. Um, that's a very small number. So what I would suggest doing is to give away your book for free. That's, again, I mentioned it as a viable strategy. You will generate some reviews out of doing that. So giving your, like for Amazon, they allow you, if you're part of a particular program, they allow you to give your book away for free for 5 days within any quarter or any 90 days. That can definitely generate reviews. One of the best ways, of course, I think, is to ask for reviews at the end of your book. I'm not sure how many authors actually do that, but you say something to the effect that if you enjoyed this book, please consider just leaving a few words in support on Amazon or Goodreads, and here's a link, and you link it in there. And if you have a mailing list, you could ask for your reviews to your mailing list by including a link as well. And those are probably the best ways.
Okay, so the various avenues that you have your books available, where do you sell most of your books?
I'm exclusive to Amazon.
Okay.
Exclusive to Amazon, and that's a choice I've made. I really believe this is important. I think to keep in mind, if you can make it on Amazon, you can make it anywhere. And so the best thing to do is to make it on Amazon, and then consider whether or not you want to take it wide, which means to take it to various other platforms like Kobo, Barnes and Noble, Apple. Because simply said, if you can't make it on Amazon, it's probably not worth the extra work to try to make it wide. And going wide, don't let it, it's a lot more work as far as administrative work, although there's some workarounds to getting your books on all platforms.
Okay, going back to the generating reviews question, Keith is sharing some more of his experience in the past. He gave away 4,300 copies of his first book in a recent promotion when his latest book was released in April. He maybe got one review out of it, and also his books do ask for reviews at the end.
I have to add, it's gonna vary from service to service.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what service he used, so that's tricky. I will say this again, like I talked about at the beginning, there's a lot of get rich quick schemes out there, and one of the schemes that some of these book downloaders or book services use is they're not their downloads might not be the best. Let me just leave it like that. I mean, there's actually been cases, and I'm not saying, this involved Keith. There have actually been cases out there where Amazon has caught just kind of like robos downloading books through services, and they've canceled those services. So your mileage is going to vary, for sure. That is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, another person did mention that often reviewers are asked to review in exchange for being given the free book, and that's definitely happened in my experience that I've seen too.
Right. So there's things like that. So Booksprout is a platform, and also Library Thing is a platform. And you still, even if your book is out there, you might be able to still use that platform to give away free ebook copies. I stress ebook copies because ebook copies don't cost you anything out of your pocket. If you're giving out paperbacks in exchange for reviews, that's a quick way for bankruptcy to go bankrupt. That really is a costly way of doing it. Not only you have to pay a couple dollars for printing, and you have to send the book there, and it's very tough. So I would look into Library Thing or Booksprout as possible options along those lines.
And then kind of going back to the general topic of self-publishing, how much does self-publishing cost for an author?
It says as little or as much as you want to spend. So when it was 2012, 2013, when I wanted to get the best possible book out there as my first book in Saving Babe Ruth. I spent a lot of money on getting it edited by a professional editor, and also I used a developmental editor with that book, and so it cost a good deal, but I made the money back. Having said that, I paid for my education because I learned things in that process that I don't have to pay for anymore, because I know just as much, if not more, than the people that actually did that work back then, based on my experience in my genre. Because the people I use were editors. They're not in the business of selling books. I'm in the business of taking something from inception to end. So I can use a lot of experience along the line and know what's important and what's not.
All right, I think we can move on to part 4, and then we can keep some more questions for the end too.
Sure. Cultural appropriation. So one of the questions was, is it impossible for a white author to get published traditionally writing novels as persons of color as their primary characters? Okay, next. So I'm going to tell you my experience with this whole concept. For my novel, Cage to Kill, I was told by people that I could not write from the point of view of a character in solitary confinement, which is what the book's about, because I'd never been in solitary. Well, I kind of think over the past few months with the pandemic, we've kind of all gotten a little taste of what solitary might be like, which is interesting because, one of the challenges of conveying the problems of solitary confinement is to show people what it's like. The group I was affiliated with, they used a sort of a mock cell to give you the experience. Well, I think people have had a little taste of it. So I was inspired by a prisoner in solitary in New York State for 33 years straight. He reached out to me as his lawyer. I thought I could raise awareness of the issue by writing a novel. So let's see here. I keep getting these questions and blocking my slide. Oh, there we go. So unrestricted solitary confinement in New York has been a problem for decades. It violates United Nations rules on torture and transcends political parties. For example, we have a Democratic legislature and governor now. We still can't really achieve any kind of meaningful change. Next slide. If change can't be achieved in these circumstances, you really need to engage more people. There's a limit on preaching to the choir. I mean, if the same people that you're protesting with are the same people year in, year out, you're not getting any new voices in there. So Cage to Kill opens up the topic to people who had never given solitary confinement a second thought. Review after review says it's an entertaining, eye-opening novel. So I also started a Change.org petition to release him from solitary and change the law that has over 1,200 signatures. Yet some people against solitary are against the novel. One critic is an author of a nonfiction, traditionally published book on solitary. So that book costs $10.99. My ebook is $3.99, at least today it is. Tomorrow might be a different story. It sells well. And I've given away over 15,000 copies for free to help raise awareness on the topic. Next. The author of the nonfiction book couldn't give away one copy of his or her book because they don't own the rights. And so, the reach is limited. So, I have over 300 pages of correspondence from the prisoner and his experience in solitary. I visited him 4 times and read over 1,000 pages of trial transcripts, and it took 2 years to write this book. So, throughout the writing process, my editor and myself felt like we were in solitary. The the assertion that I could not write about being in solitary because I'd never been there is without merit because I did the research. Okay. Next. And while you'll never know the impact of the novel had, now all of a sudden the prisoner is on the fast track to be released from solitary next year. Also, there's a huge number of people outside of the choir who are aware of the issue now than before. So I don't know if there's a ban against authors by agents or publishing houses. If you're writing from a point of view different from your own skin color, can't say that. But I do know you can publish such a book independently. If you're passionate about it, there's nothing stopping you. Do the research well on that point of view if you plan to use it. And, to follow up on that, what's really interesting as an advantage to the independent author is that a number of the platforms that I mentioned, notably Amazon, BookBub, I don't think Facebook would do this, allow you to market to readers of African American literature. I've actually had a book, an African American author wanted marketed and was able to use these means. There's also third-party vendors that I mentioned, like maybe Fussy Librarian, that allows you to target readers of people with interest in African American literature. I think that's interesting because at least as far as I know today, you can't do that for like Latin American literature or Asian American literature. So, but for African American literature, you can do it. So going back to what I said before, as far as what services you should use, it all depends on your book. It all depends on your book. Some of these things work better for some books than they do for others. Okay. What we got?
So I'm gonna start with the one that's just about part 4, and then I'll go back to a couple of others. Do you feel the necessity to pay for sensitivity readers by those in the group you're writing about to make sure they're in agreement with how you've represented their perspective?
Well, did that question involve the word pay?
Yes, it did.
No, I would not pay for that because then you've created some kind of financial incentive. If you're paying someone to get honest feedback, we're more inclined to tell you what they want to hear if they're getting paid. But having said that, I'd certainly go out and give it to beta readers, who have that point of view for sure. That would be a good idea. So, in the writing process, when you're done, when you think you're done, you think you're just about ready to be published, you could get a bunch of, ask for a bunch of people who are interested in getting a free copy of a book in exchange for giving you feedback on it. And there's people out there who are so generous with their time who would, go back and might even tell you page by page, or at least in summary form of all the problems they've had with your book, and maybe actually write you, like a page summary in a Word document, on page or section, this part I had an issue with this. Maybe you should look at it. That feedback is valuable.
All right, and regarding ebook pricing, is there a magic ebook price point? If you discount, what's your approach, and when do you do that?
So research has shown that the optimal price point for an independent author, I can't, traditional authors or publishers are priced much higher, and there's a number of reasons for that. The traditionally published books, ebooks by big name authors go for between $10 and $14.99. But for an independent author, the sweet spot is either $3.99 or $4.99. So at any one point in time, I'm only offering a discount on one book. And I'm hopeful that the discount on that book will entice them to not only buy one book, but to buy other books. I actually had that experience yesterday where I was discounting Saving Babe Ruth as a free offering, and it led to a bunch of sales of my other two books that actually, paid a little bit less than the cost of advertising. So, that's the way you do it. You don't offer them all for free at once, one at a time, and either free or you can discount it to like 99 cents. That's usually the sweet spot for discounting. If you want to charge a price, it'd be 99 cents.
All right, and going back to the finances of self-publishing, could you give a dollar range for how much it costs for self-publishing or hybrids aside from editing costs? Kind of ballpark figures.
Well, it depends, because I really can't, because it all depends on your skill set. So, for example, I'm able, a cover by a professional might cost anywhere from $60 to maybe like $800. And I'm talking about a book cover that you can use for both an ebook and print. But, for me, because due to my writing process, so when I'm writing a book, I'm thinking about the cover. I'm actually designing the cover. If you go, for example, on my my YouTube channel, just look up my name under my YouTube, you will see I did a video on how my mindset was in creating the cover for the Killdeer Connection and what the process was. And so because I'm able to do that, I know what I'm looking for. I know the genre. I'm doing that so I can hire someone with less skills to meet what the concept that I want. And so I had the concept for the Killdeer Connection down. That's exactly the way I finally figured it. And so I had someone do the technical work to make sure it would come to life more on the paperback platform. So it costs less. Literally, for me at this point in time, it costs close to nothing to put out an ebook. It just takes the time. So it all depends on the skill set you have, and whether some authors rely solely on their beta readers. They don't have editing. That's their editing is their beta readers, and hopefully they hope that the beta readers pick out all the mistakes, and that's what they go to print with. And of course, you'll see, and it's interesting what some authors do. So if they're ever criticized for their editing or their grammar skills, but the book's still selling really well, they'll say, something, I should go back and, just get that book up to snuff and get it up to speed. And so you just kind of take it out of circulation. You won't lose your reviews if you're just doing some, proofreading changes. And then they put it back out there. So there's lots of corners that can be cut, so you can spend as much or as little as you wish. Ballpark, I don't think it would cost. This is a lot of money for some people. $15,000 at the most. Okay, so there's a ballpark for you.
Okay, and in continuing with the idea of beta readers and also sensitivity reading, where would you find beta readers for sensitivity reading toward the end, right before you publish? Specifically, reliable people who won't steal the book?
Well, first and foremost, from your mailing list, and also, from people personally. Okay. But interesting question about the book. That's a whole other topic I could talk about. But it's as soon as you create it, you have copyright on it, and so for someone to do that, that's really that's kind of out there. It's not something I'd be particularly worried about if I properly vetted the readers. And I know that can be tough at times, but you'll think of creative ways to do it.
Yeah, one person commented, friends as beta readers have a vested interest. They might be more willing to give you honest feedback too.
Well, I think the point is that friends, if your friends are beta readers, they still want to be your friends. They might not be as honest as you'd like them to be.
No, but I would hope they'd also want to see you succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. But I gotta tell you, and it's people's experience. That people they don't want to hurt your feelings. You try so hard, and they just they want to So it's easier to say nothing than to say something quick.
Okay, and question about book covers. Your covers have changed with Cage to Kill being the most striking. How did you develop your book covers?
Well, I'll tell you about why I changed the Cage to Kill cover. And so go to the next slide. I think that one more slide there that might help to answer that question. The demographic, yeah.
Looks
So,
good.
yeah. So someone asked earlier, how do I find out what my reader is? One of the biggest advantages I had with doing the Kildare connection is that they actually, through Amazon, provided this kind of data. So when you ask, how to identify my reader, so I was able to do that. And so I look at, I was surprised. So I see 55 to 65 represents 19% of my readers, and 66 and over, that's kind of like to infinity, is 2/3 of my readers. I thought those two would be switched. I thought I'd have a higher, 66% of my readers would be between 56 and 65, and then 19 would be, percent would be over 66. Anyway, going back to why I changed the cover, you'll see that my readership is more female than it is male. And I felt that cover was too harsh, and might put some women readers off. So I wanted to soften it up. And I also thought that the book itself had an uplifting message, even though it was difficult to probably as a reader to get to the end. It had an uplifting message, and I wanted to reflect that. And so in the new cover, you'll see lighter colors. You'll also see a butterfly on the cell. I think that butterfly has significance in the book itself, and it raised the whole concept of hope.
Okay. Another more legal question. How do you avoid being sued for libel or being sued for stealing someone else's ideas?
Well, ideas, first off, ideas are not copyrightable. Only the expression of ideas are copyrightable. I can say that as a lawyer. So your particular expression of an idea is copyrightable. How you express that idea, but the idea itself, no. What was the first part of the first question?
Libel.
Libel. So, well, so libel is, if you're writing fiction and you're disguising your characters well enough, and if you have someone in mind, libel is not going to be an issue. Having said that, on my first book, Saving Babe Ruth, I was definitely threatened. Someone threatened a lawsuit against me, and I kind of knew that could happen. So I actually bought insurance. I bought liability insurance, libel insurance. That I think it cost me like $1,000 a year. The lawsuit never generated. I think that particular person learned a lesson. That's a long story, but believe me, when I knew exactly what I was doing as a lawyer, and doing what I did, and so I had everything covered.
Okay, we're definitely past noon, but I know you had some additional slides in case they came up with questions. Is there anything you wanted to talk about in those slides, or we can kind of wrap it up from here?
No, just if there's any other questions that I haven't answered, we have a couple minutes, we can do that, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, anyone can keep submitting. I'll keep reading. Can you talk about your coaching a bit?
Oh yeah, the coaching is really person specific. So I would much rather have people do as much legwork as possible to get the information together that I need to do to either make recommendations or do the work in order to make it cost effective. It's not something, again, that I don't want anybody to have. I want everyone to have a good experience, but so much of this is hit or miss, even with the best of efforts. Did I get the release from? I see it from Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
No, I did not have to get the release from Babe Ruth because I wasn't using his image, to advertise the book. You can use his name in the title of a book. You'll see plenty of books out there with Babe Ruth's title on Babe Ruth's name in it. That's not something that's a legal issue.
And do you do copyright formally is one of the other quick questions that came in.
No, I do not do copyright formally. I do not do copyright law formally, no.
Would you recommend not mentioning real people to avoid a chance of a lawsuit, even if true information about them is important as theme background?
Depend upon the information. That's not a black or white question. Depend upon the information you're trying to convey out there. If it's just like that they were at a certain place at a certain point in time, and we're doing certain things, just everyday things. I'm not talking anything nefarious, and just going from here to there or whatever. Everyday things is libel is not an issue. I mean, that's not an issue. But when you start talking about things that person's doing that aren't in the normal course of everyone's day and might be questionable, then you might have an issue.
Yeah, the specific example they gave is writing about something about real bad guys that are still living.
I think you pretty much answered your own question there. If they're real bad guys, you got to be careful about what you're writing.
Should you also be careful when it comes to mentioning specific streets or house numbers, if they do exist in real life, obviously?
Yeah, because I don't think you want to dox anybody. I mean, you don't want to have people showing up at their doorstep or something. I mean, that's not something that's
probably safer. Okay. Going back to coaching too, do you charge hourly for coaching? If so, what is your rate?
I charge hourly, and it's negotiable. It depends upon what needs to be done. I don't want this to turn into advertising for my services. So. Any other questions?
Give it another minute and see if another one comes in. Oh, someone did mention that you deserve the advertising, so there's a plug for you right there.
Well, that's nice. But so I should probably just go back to book covers just a little bit, because I think they're so important and so overlooked. And so, of course, you can see in these book covers, of course, Case to Kill has changed. I should have updated that. But you want to convey to your reader that it's something that they're interested in. So, I'm doing a legal thriller. That was really tough to do with Saving Babe Ruth. So in the original Saving Babe Ruth, I did change that cover. The clouds were kind of bright. It was a clear, sunny day, and they're on a baseball field, and so it didn't have a thriller vibe to it. If you notice in all my books, I kept the same kind of topography, and I think that's important too, to identify a topography that's common to your genre, and to make sure, because that's just another way of connecting with your reader. And you don't want to do too much in the way of topography. You don't want to have, like, I wouldn't suggest having any more than 2 fonts. And you can see I have a sans serif font, and then I have a regular font at the bottom. I wouldn't suggest any more than 2 fonts, because you don't want anything confusing to the eye. Again, it's that half second, and and so, the Kildare connection, you have a courthouse in the background, you have a lawyer sitting on his briefcase, but the focal point is directed right at the bird on his shoulder, and it's a killdeer bird, and it has a big role in this particular book. But I thought that it basically said to the reader, oh, it's a legal thriller, cool. Oh, what's that bird on there? And that makes it different, so it connects with your reader, but yet it's a little bit different. And it's funny, in Saving Babe Ruth. So I'm doing a book about the Civil War, and its impact on this particular person's running of a baseball league, modern day. And so, and I'm part of the book. A good part of the book. One of the main elements is this Sharp's carbine, which is actually the gun in the cover. And I had so much in the way of negative reaction to that gun in the cover by mostly educators. And I understand that, except for one thing, the gun isn't being, actually two things. The gun isn't being pointed at the reader. I think that's a no-no, as far as doing a book cover. I tried to make it, and it's not in an aggressive fashion. Matter of fact, you can see he's leaning on it like he would lean on a baseball bat. So all these things, and you might not think, well, gee, you really think about these things and make the cover. I did. But one of the things they missed about with the Saving Babe Ruth cover, if you look really closely at it, one of the biggest problems that people should have with it is that the fact that the model there is really kind of giving you the finger with his middle finger on the rifle. But no one picked up on that. I thought that was funny, that everyone had a problem with the gun, but not with the guy giving you the finger. So, all right.
One quick question and then we can wrap up. Going back to Cage to Kill,
Yep.
because you had so much correspondence with the prisoner, did he ever give you formal permission or sign a release so that you could incorporate aspects of his story?
Well, I used the aspects of what he related to me in the fictional sense. So we just, we have a great friendship. So did I ever make him sign a formal release? No, I didn't do that. But I know that as far as legally goes, it's a piece of fictional work and says so in the cover, and it's presented as such, it shouldn't be a problem.
And the photos for your covers, do you find them through kind of open source websites, or do you pay for them?
Okay, so yeah, there's various sites out there like CanStock Photo. There's sites that are royalty-free sites, like Pixabay is a good royalty-free site, which basically allows you. Royalty-free means that you have to be very cognizant of this. You have to, when you read royalty-free, you have to make sure that you can use it both personally and commercially for free. You can use images. So those are all really photoshopped images. They're not, there's not really images out there like this. I mean, there's not an image of a baseball player holding a gun that I could find. So I'm sure that was photoshopped onto his hand. I used for the killdeer connection, I used actual killdeer. I silhouetted that, and then I found the actual individual and in a paid site, and that seemed to work out well. And then of course the pillars are a third image, so there's really three images there. And Cage to Kill is really I brought the hands together to fit on the cover in this particular edition, the black version, and so that was photoshopped to bring the hands together. So yeah, you basically you have this vision, you go out and you look for it, you look for something close to it, or at least you look for something that you think can be changed to sort of encompass the vision that you have, making sure at all times that the vision you have is not just your vision, okay, you think is good, but what your reader is going to identify with and connect with and want to look into reading your book.
All right, I think that wraps it up for today. So thank you again, Tom, so much for doing this workshop and answering everyone's questions. Again, we'll be posting the video to YouTube later this week, and I'll send everyone an email so you guys know when it's available. But thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
This book festival is made possible with the support of the McGuire Family Endowment at the Writers Institute, the University at Albany Foundation, the Office of the President of UAlbany, the Peacock Family Foundation, the Capital District Library Council, Stuyvesant Plaza, Chet and Karen Opalka, Charles Toohey and Alice Green, Pernilla Dake, Elizabeth Ruthman, and Betsy Lopez. If you appreciate our programming and would like to support the Writers Institute, you can find out how at nyswritersinstitute.org.